Okay, so let's look at this. My dude here, James Boyce, he's a monster. I recommend anything he has written, except on baptism. I disagree with him on baptism. However, what'd you say, brother? What'd you say? Let me read you this. This guy here, his name is Ray Stedman. He's a former pastor of a church in California. Here's what he said. Now watch this. Listen close. I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs, but this is us. This is all of you. This is what this guy says to himself in the morning when he gets up. He says, I'm made in the image of God. I'm not an animal, and I don't have to behave like an animal. I have the ability within me given by God himself to respond and relate to God. That is one of the main things what it is to be made in the image of God. You alone can communicate with God. Now angels can too. But like cows aren't out in the field praying, and though my wife would like to think so, my dogs don't pray, right? They don't. And you as people have that ability, us made in the image of God, we communicate with the Creator himself, the source of all things. So he says, given to me by God himself to respond and relate to God. Therefore, I can behave as a man and not as a beast. Okay, we're over all created things. Second, I am filled with the Spirit of God. This is only for Christians. The most amazing thing has happened. Though I don't deserve it in the least degree, I have the power of God at work within me. I have become, in some sense, a bearer of God. And God himself is willing to be at work in me and through the problems and pressures I go through this day. Third, I am a part of the plan of God. God is working out all things to a great final purpose in the earth. I am a part of it. What I do today has purpose and significance and meaning. This is not a meaningless day. I am not going through. This is not a meaningless day I'm going through. Even the smallest incident, the most apparently insignificant word or relationship is involved in his great plan. Therefore, all of it has meaning and purpose. Okay, that's a good perspective. It's not too highly of you, but it's not too low of you either. And those are the two traps. Either we think way too lowly of ourselves, or we think way too highly of ourselves. Now, in our culture, we think way too highly of ourselves. One commentator who I was reading was talking about a worldwide testing they did on kids. And what the test consisted of was this. I think it was in mathematics, Japan, Korea, China, America, Australia, all the nations. Two things. One is, how did they score? And then the second was, how did they feel about how they thought they scored? I think it was Japan. They scored the highest, and they thought the lowest of how they did. America scored the lowest and thought the highest of how they did. It's a sober reality that we preach false self-esteem like it's the most important thing. And so we think everyone thinks they're great when the reality is we're not. Okay? Now, we can do this too. Now, this is where I've had problems in the past. In an attempt to be humble in my younger days, anyone ever hear of false humility? Okay? False humility is actually pride in disguise. It's pride with a costume on of humility. It really is. And so here's what it looked like practically for me. I used to go to art school, and I would spend massive amounts of time on my assignments. And God has given me a gift to do art, okay? And if he's given you a gift to do something, you shouldn't be ashamed about it. Like, if you can sing, why be ashamed of that gift? If you can do art, don't be ashamed. If you have, a writing gift, don't be ashamed. But in an attempt to sort of be humble, God has given me a gift to do art, and there was about 5 guys or 4 guys in the class who were good. And there was a healthy competition, as my teacher would put it. And so we would all bring in our stuff, and everyone would gather around these 4 individuals to see what they did. I was one of those 4. And so I would be presenting and everyone presented their stuff. You had to get it graded and you had to get it evaluated. So when I presented my stuff, I would be like, it's not good. It's not that good. Blah, blah, blah. People were like, you're crazy, blah, 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 blah. And the one guy was like, dude, you're a little too humble. And this guy's not even a Christian. And he really pointed it out. The reality was that I was being falsely humble, and it was pride in disguise. Okay? The idea is, if God has gifted you in something, you can acknowledge the gift, but here's what's interesting. 1 Corinthians 4:7 says, what do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why do you boast as if you didn't? That's the key. Okay? If you can do anything, you received it from God. If you're an artist, guess what? Satan didn't give you that gift. And you didn't miraculously obtain it out of nothingness. God gave it to you. And that goes for everything. Okay? If you're good at anything, I don't care if it's, fixing things. Like some guys are just good at fixing anything they touch. Right? Mechanical. Whatever you are, if you're super organized, like I envy you, because I'm not. Like if you have time management skills, I envy you. I'm terrible at that. Okay? You don't have to pretend you're something you're not, but at the same time, don't think like you're God's gift to humanity either. You see what I'm saying? There's this balance we need to achieve and realize, okay, if you're good at something, guess what? It's a gift God has given you. That's real humility. It's, okay, God works through me. He's given me this gift. And what's interesting, and I really want to study more on this, and I might write on it someday, I don't know. Common grace is so intriguing to me. Common grace is the idea that God casts his gifts upon all of humanity, Christian and non. And so the reason Rembrandt and Leonardo and Michelangelo and Jim Lee, these guys were, Jim Lee is? Anybody? Come on. Marvel Comics? Dude, you're the man. I'm thinking the Pirates old man. Bruce Lee, yeah.
Stanley.
Stanley. Okay. Stanley, does that make sense? He shows up secretly in every Marvel film. Even for a second, he's the mailman, or he's he's a pizza delivery guy for real. Watch any Marvel film and you'll see him in there somewhere. But this guy was a beast. I mean, he created all the famous comic book characters. Everybody who is Marvel is Stan Lee. This guy's a monster. Okay, but guess what? He's not a Christian as far as I know. So where did he get those gifts? Not Satan. Here's what I'm getting at. Every musician that you like, whether Christian or non, even to the foulest of musicians, that gift was given them by God. And they take it and they use it not for his glory, for which is why he gave it. They use it for their own glory. And that's the danger for everybody, Christian and non, is you're good at some things, but usually we're good at one or two things. Very rarely do you meet some person who's good at everything. But we often take that one or two things we're good at, and then we like to throw it in everybody's face. And the idea is we're not using it for God's glory, but for our glory. If you know anything about rap or hip-hop, it is self-glorification out of control. Okay? And so the art of bragging is what we'll call hip-hop. And I used to love it. But just listen to it and watch how much they talk about themselves. You can probably time it within seconds about how much they talk about themselves. Okay, what are they doing? They're taking a gift God has given them and they're using it to glorify themselves. And usually what they're saying is not true. They're farly exaggerating the reality. Okay, and so here's what it is. God has given gifts to everybody. That's common grace. He casts his gifts abroad to all of humanity. Even atheists who are geniuses. Where did Einstein get his intelligence? I mean, the guy was a monster. Where did Nostradamus get his intelligence? Some would say maybe demons, and maybe in that case, yes, okay, because he did get some strange prophecies right. I don't know how you do that. However, the idea is those guys got their gifts from God. And so You ever meet people who, they might be really, really, really smart, but yet like the street smarts aren't there. And then you might meet the other end of the spectrum where this guy's got mad street smarts and street wisdom, but yet he doesn't understand anything book-wise, and maybe some of them can't even read. Okay, those are both gifts from God, believe it or not. Like, you can be very wise and shrewd and know how the world works and not be intellectual at all, and it's a gift from God. And the same is true the other way. You could be very intellectual and understand the deepest of concepts that would blow me out of the water, okay? And it's a gift from God. And what's interesting is you can use that gift to oppose God, and that's what non-Christians do. Atheists is the best example. They use the intellect and the geniusness that God has given them to write books to disprove that he exists. And they lecture to disprove that he exists. And so they use the gift he's given them to oppose him, to glorify themselves, and one day they will give an account.